Hello and welcome to Bry's Book and Film. The film I want to talk about today is Goodfellas from 1990. Now I know that I'm late to the party on this particular film, but Goodfellas is quite frankly one of the best films I've ever seen. Everything about this film is top end. There's nothing bad about this film that I've found. I've watched it a few times. I've even made notes. I've got my little piece of paper. I've made notes. Goodfellas, 1990, directed by the legendary Martin Scorsese. To any other budding wannabe filmmakers, if you want to see what a good film is, and you want to make a good film, watch Goodfellas. There's nothing bad about this film at all. It's based on a true story by Nicholas Pileggi. I hope I've pronounced that right. It's adapted from his book Wise Guy, which I have on order. It's actually coming this week. So you have Ray Liotta, I hope I've said that correctly, pronounced it right, playing Henry Hill. Robert De Niro is Jimmy Conway. Joe Pesci is Tommy DeVito. Lorraine Bracco plays Karen Hill, Henry's wife. Paul Sorvino plays Paulie. Paul Sorvino is one of those actors, when you look at a film, you go, hang on a minute, that's that bloke, that's him, and he's just one of those people, one of those actors, one of those faces that you've seen everywhere. Frank Vincent plays Billy Batts. Only briefly in a brief part of the film though, and there's a surprising a surprising member of the cast is Catherine Scorsese, who is actually Martin Scorsese's real life mum, and she plays Tommy DeVito's mum. So you got, Tommy's mum is played by the director's own real life mum. It just doesn't get any better than that, does it? So, it's a story about greed, loyalty, and betrayal. Ultimately, that's what it all comes down to. It tracks the story from 1955, when Henry Hill is a young teenager and he becomes a runner for the sort of the mob blokes across the street there. And it sort of ends up in 1980. So Henry, much to the annoyance of his parents, ends up working for these mafia blokes. Got an itch. And his parents are really not impressed, because he's skipping school to go out and do all kinds of running around, robbing mainly Idlewild Airport, which I believe became JFK Airport after JFK was assassinated. I believe that's what happened. If I'm wrong, feel free to straighten me out in the comments, but I didn't actually research that bit. So he ends up, he becomes a member of this mob, this gang, this firm, to put it into British parlance, that he becomes a member of the local firm. And it follows. It's the narration as well. There's the narration part of things, and the line. I've heard the line. One day, some of the kids from the neighbourhood carried my mother's groceries all the way home. You know why? It was out of respect. Now I'd heard that line. It's in a song, Original Nutter. It's a quality song. But we're not here to talk about music. But that line is in the song, and it's from the film. It's from Goodfellas, I believe. So you've got the narration telling the story over the top of, not over the top, but it's in balance with what's happening. So it keeps you up to speed on what's going on. The film paces absolutely beautifully. There's no "this is 40" moments where you're languishing in the middle. This film keeps moving, but not too fast. It doesn't move too fast that you can't keep up. There was a moment when I was watching it, and I did have to pause it and rewind. I rewound it and then watched it again, and then I paused it so I could check with ChatGPT, because in the middle of the film you're introduced to Henry Hill's mistress. He's now got a mistress a bit on the side, and I thought, hang on a minute, I've not seen this, what's her name, Janice, I think, Janice, and I thought, hang on a minute, we've not had this character introduced. So I asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT confirmed that that is actually an intentional thing by Martin Scorsese. So there was no set-up meeting. There was no, as ChatGPT said, there was no meet cute. It was just there to illustrate how Henry Hill has sort of taken a mistress, so he's cheating on his wife. He set this young lady up in a flat, an apartment, so you know he can go around there and do whatever it is people in that position do. I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to review the film. So it was an intentional thing by Scorsese to just, this is how far he's come now, from loving his wife and his kids to he's now got a mistress, and here we are where we are. So you know, it's done deliberately. So although I was confused initially, I rewound it a minute or so, and then I rewatched, you know, and then I sort of got up to speed with it. So it did cause me a little bit of confusion, because there are times, and I have been known sometimes in the past, occasionally, sometimes, occasionally, just sort of drift off and nod a little bit. But I hadn't done that on this occasion, because you won't nod off watching Goodfellas, because the action just keeps on, keeps you going. So it goes on, and then Henry, Jimmy, Tommy, and Paulie. No, pardon me, not Tommy. Jimmy, Paulie, and Henry all end up in prison. Henry and Jimmy are sent to Florida by Paulie to enforce a debt or some other errand, some other gangster's errand that he'd sent them on. And they ended up, the guy they was enforcing on had a sister who worked in the FBI, and she grassed them all up, and they ended up getting nicked. And you don't see Jimmy for a little while, because he apparently serves his time in Atlanta, I think it said in the film. And Paulie and Henry and a few of the other members of the firm are all in prison. You know, Jimmy and Henry got tenors for that. They got tenors for that, and Paulie only got a year, I think it said, or a year or two. You know, in that time, Karen Hill is left to sort of struggle and fend for herself for whatever reason. She's finding it hard. She's struggling with the two little children that they've got, and that sort of comes to a head because Karen goes to see Henry in prison for a visiting order thing, and she sees that he's had a visit from his mistress, so she's not happy about that. So she blows a fuse, and she's smuggling all this stuff into the prison, which she's, you know, because the guards are on the payroll, so she's chucking all this food at Henry, and she's having a proper epi about it. You know. So anyway, so they finish their time, and Henry ends up involved in the drug thing. Much to Paulie really doesn't want anybody on his firm getting involved with drugs, the taking of them, the supplying of them, the pushing of them. He doesn't want anything at all to do with drugs, and he's really, really adamant and quite forthright with Henry when he says, don't get involved. What you did in prison, you did in prison. You're out now. Don't get bogged down in that whole viper's nest of drugs. And Henry says, no, of course not, I won't. Meaning, I will, and I am, and I'm already doing it. So that's the thing that happens. And then he's taking the drugs, and and he's got another bit on the side now, and it's you know how these things go. Playing with my notes there. And it's ultimately the drugs that are the downfall of the firm, of his little firm, because he brings in Jimmy Conway and Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito, played by Joe Pesci. I absolutely love Joe Pesci. If he isn't one of the best actors of all time, one of the most underrated as well. Everybody goes Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro's good, but Joe Pesci is he's just wonderful to watch. He truly is. So anyway, now the soundtrack to the film. Let me just talk about the soundtrack. The soundtrack features the Rolling Stones, so you're onto a winner straight away. Bobby Vinton, Bobby Darin, the Ronettes. The soundtrack is. The soundtrack alone is just spectacular. Every song that plays serves a purpose in the film. It's not just a case of, right, we've got Mick Jagger giving it that now. It's not that at all. It is everything. The song is just right for the mood, for the transitions in the film, for where we are, the pacing. The Rolling Stones, Bobby Vinton, Bobby Darin, the Ronettes, and that is just a few that I've jotted down. The soundtrack alone is absolutely sublime. I can't say enough good things about this. What I'm going to say is this film definitely gets the 5 coffee cup rating. This is a spectacularly good film. So anyway, so it follows basically Henry's rise through the ranks. He sort of has his highs and his lows. He lives a life of luxury. Ultimately, drugs are the downfall, which is true in all aspects of life. Drugs are the downfall. And it is what it is. In the end, Henry is certain that Jimmy's gonna whack him. He's gonna kill him. So reluctantly, I suppose, Henry becomes an informant for the old Bill and ends up in witness protection, living a boring, ordinary, boring life. The life he's been used to of theft and crime and enforcement, and it's all over now. And I believe that Jimmy went away for a big stretch, and so did Paulie, I believe. So if we think back to Casino, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Frank Vincent all starred in Casino, directed again by the legendary Martin Scorsese. So it's got pedigree. It's a quality film, a definite 5 coffee cup rating. For what is quite frankly one of the best films I've seen. It's a crime, yes, it's a crime story. Even if you're not really interested in gangster, crime, mafia stories in and of themselves, it's worth watching just for the sheer quality of the overall product. It is sublime. It is just so well put together. It is just so. It's just a masterpiece of a film. It truly is. And I know that I'm incredibly late to the party, and I've only got myself to blame for that. But I'm glad I waited. Definite 5 coffee cups. Definitely. It's such a good film. It is just top of the line. If like me you haven't seen it, I mean, I hadn't seen it up until very, very recently. If you haven't seen Goodfellas, trust me, give it a watch. Give Goodfellas a chance. You won't be disappointed, because it is just so. What else can I say? What else can I say about such a well written, well directed, well acted. The film with the brilliant soundtrack that it's got. The soundtrack is something else. The soundtrack will add to a film. The soundtrack, I think, elevates the film to, it just pushes it over the top. The soundtrack pushes it to just takes it to the next level. I do have the book on order. It's coming this week. Wise Guy by Nicholas Pileggi. I hope I pronounced that right. Nicholas Pileggi. I hope I pronounced that right. So, if you've not seen Goodfellas, do yourselves a massive favour. Give it a watch. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.